I I think most of you all know me for a good number of years, but if there's someone out there who doesn't, I'm Fran Trubilla Kissell, and I'm class of 78. And I've got my co-presenter, my husband Randy. We've been involved in a lot of Wells projects together. But our favorite is digging into the history of the college. And every time we do a dig, we come up with more questions than answers. And so we are going to keep on trying to do that even in these times. I'm going to just start by saying that I will be telling you a lot of stories about campaign funds and money raising, which sounds kind of dry, but the ability to get people behind those campaigns and to contribute seems to be Paul Jones's superpower. And every one of those campaigns resulted in things that we experienced as part of our time at Wells: buildings, scholarships, programs. There, she threw in pebbles, and the ripples spread out to our generation. Um, I'm We're still beginning to just get to know her. Haven't had the opportunity to get into some of the Alumni Association records yet, but someday, I promise. I want to thank Tiffany Raymond from 10, who, near the college's closing, made sure that so many of our yearbooks got digitized and placed on the New York Heritage Society's webpage. And that allowed me to get in and see a lot of interesting stuff. What we have been able to learn so far about Pauline Jones from the class of 1918 is the story of a lifetime service to Wells College, its students, and especially the alumni. Her record of service occurs in 6 different decades, in several different positions, both paid and volunteer, and through the administrations of 5 different college presidents. It seems to me she's been gifted with a natural disposition for leadership that developed under the watch of some of Wells's most beloved alumni, and continued until she herself became part of the old guard and then passed on the torch to the rest of us. It's hard to look at many of the features of the campus without having to acknowledge her role in getting those things there. And her final gift to the college was the little house in Aurora that now bears her name. I'm going to ask my favorite genealogist to give you just a little bit of background about Pauline's family and where she came from.
Hey, thanks. I'm Randy. Uh, Fran, usually once she gets the microphone, you got to wrestle it away from her. So I'm going to make the most of this opportunity before she wrestles it back. But I was tasked by Fran to look into the life of Pauline Jones, almost like a historian or someone, a genealogist would. And I've been dabbling with genealogy for my own family and for Fran's, and thought it would be an interesting exercise. And I was able to create a family tree on Ancestry for Pauline Jones. And it was a very interesting process. Now, when Pauline was uh, born in 1896,
January.
January 1896, her parents, Frederick Jones and Alice McAlavey, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but a Scottish family. Her family was enjoying some newly minted wealth from the booming steel industry. And apparently, both lines, the maternal and paternal lines of her family, had were in effect nouveau riche, not on the level of Andrew Carnegie, but Frick or people like that. But they had very good jobs and were doing well in Youngstown, Ohio, where the steel industry just downriver from Pittsburgh was thriving. Her paternal grandfather, Paul Jones, for whom Pauline was likely named, was a vice president of Youngstown Steel, and her mother was the granddaughter of William Bonnell, who founded Brown Bonnell Company, which was a forerunner of Republic Steel. And their mill is shown in this picture right here. A year after Paul was born, her brother Frederick Henry Jones, who seemed to have gone by Henry, maybe to distinguish himself from his father Frederick, was born. And they were the only children of Frederick and Alice. I show a little bit of her family tree here. And her family was mostly from the British Isles. Her great-grandfather, William Jones, was a stonemason, and he was born in Ireland in 1811 and somehow found his way to Youngstown, Ohio by 1850, where he appears in the census there. Her great-grandfather, Nathaniel McAlevey, was born in Scotland in 1790, and he had arrived in Western Pennsylvania by about 1820. And William Bonnell and his wife, Sarah Ann Scott, were from England. They may have had more money when they came as opposed to the other family members, but they were from England and they came to America in 1841. Now, just note that Gustavus McAlevey was an architect. And if you look at the occupation of some of the other family members, particularly even around 1900, they're shown as purchasing agents for steel companies and or vice presidents. And I noticed how different that was from Fran's family tree, where her ancestors were fugitives from the coal police or miners in eastern Pennsylvania. But anyway, with that, I'll turn it back over to her and let her take it from there.
So when it was time for Paul to enter college in 1914, this is her freshman class on the steps of Zabriskie. And at that time, when she came in 1914, there was this really interesting blend of both the old and the new of the college. Smith Hall, the dining hall, Zabriskie, and the Cleveland Library were all less than 10 years old, but they were standing beside the venerable old buildings of the 19th century. The very proper and by the book Dean Helen Fairchild Smith had retired, and she was succeeded by Anna Adams Paiute, Wells class of 1887, who was something of a more motherly and more relaxed kind of dean. And also new to the campus was this gentleman, Kerr Duncan McMillan. He is our longest serving president, and he was inaugurated just before Paul came to campus in 1913. Now, President McMillan, a theologian from Princeton, had a very strong commitment to the moral and ethical aspects of a college education. But he was also very practical, and he stressed the financial health of the college, wanting to build a strong endowment and create a long-term plan of fiscal responsibility and fiscal stability for the college. And we'll learn a little bit more about that in a minute. But Paul settled into the life of a Wells woman. She became president of her freshman class, and she joined the mandolin club. She is, and the Wells Scientific Society. She also played tennis. She and her partner defeated the seniors of 1917 in the doubles division of the annual fall tennis tournament. And she served as secretary of collegiate in the 16-17 year. So she's quite the Wells woman right from the beginning. Um, and so things were humming along for her and for the college and for the country. Everyone hoped that the United States would avoid involvement in the war happening in Europe, and everyone was looking forward to the college's 50th anniversary in 1918. And there were plans for a large celebration. As part of this celebration, a $500,000 campaign to enhance the college endowment was underway, with alums taking the leading roles. Now, as a student, Paul did her part by purchasing the Wells College Songbook put together by a committee from the class of 17 to add to the alumni efforts. And I have held her copy of the book. Last I saw it, it was in Pettibone. I don't know about now. We shall see. But things changed quickly for Paul and for the college and for the nation in April 1917, when the United States entered the Great War. President McMillan canceled the campaign for the duration of the war, and the 50th anniversary celebration was also scaled back. Students were encouraged instead to participate in activities to contribute to the war effort. They knit bandages and socks and sweaters. They learned first aid and basic nursing skills in Red Cross classes. They also planted some victory gardens to make sure that the college had its own source of vegetables. And I'm not sure if she's in this photo for sure or not. AI and I disagree about who she might be. But I'm sure Paul did everything she could to support the effort, because by that time, her brother Henry had entered the service. And Randy, he was serving in France.
Yes.
And he participated in the Battle of Argonne, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, her family was in the thick of it. She must have been really worried, of course, but she didn't seem to let on too much to others, because when 1918's yearbook staff was putting together a page that took the initials of each senior and assigned them a description based on her character with those same initials, here's what they came up for Paul. She was declared to be perennially jolly. Thank you. Okay, so in the years that Paul graduated, commencement and alumni reunion took place together, and new graduates were welcomed into the association and its activities. The 1918 affair, which had a graduating class of 38 members, it included a conference on war work that had presentations by the alumni who were involved in some manner with it. Alumni were also working with the students to raise funds to support 3 Wells alums who were going to France to work with the YMCA canteen program. And former First Lady and Wells trustee Frances Folsom Cleveland Preston, she was remarried by that time, from the class of 85, chaired the successful fundraising effort. And this may have been the first time that Frank and Paul were together. But it wouldn't be the last time. I think little did she know that she would soon be working with Frank. So after graduation, Paul returned home to her family in Youngstown. Fortunately, Henry survived the war and came home in the spring of 19 and was married in a very nice society wedding in the Washington DC area and Pauline served as a bridesmaid. We find her in the 1920 census as not having employment, but that doesn't mean that she was idle, because in 1921, Paul was elected president of the college's Alumnae Association, despite her young age. And I've looked at the records, and as best I can determine, she was our youngest ever Alumnae Association president. So in 1922, after putting the campaign back together, Macmillan was eager to get restarted and expand the goal to $1 million. And folks, that's about $18 million in today's money. So it was a big deal. I don't know that we've had campaigns like that in recent times. The college was supposed to raise 700 grand of that over 5 years in order to be able to get a grant for the balance from the Rockefeller Foundation. Again, Mrs. Preston, Frank, agreed to serve as national chair. And the alumni were assigned that to give or get $333 apiece over the 5 years. And so part of Paul's role as the president was to solicit and encourage participation and make sure that everybody did their bit. And perhaps she was a natural at fundraising, or perhaps she was quickly learning at the hands of Frank and the rest of the old guard from the Alumnae Association, because they had shown remarkable abilities to bring alumni dollars to the college. Some of you have heard me talk about how the association had previously restored the college's library after the fire in 1888, how they purchased Glen Park for the college and built a whole new building to honor Helen Fairchild Smith. So anyway, here are Frank and Paul. The campaign began in March of 1922. By June, the $700,000 goal was met. And the campaign finished 3 years ahead of schedule. So wildly successful. And these funds helped the college to make some important improvements to the campus. The water tank, yes, that same one that we've seen up in the woods, was constructed that year. And fire hydrants appeared on campus for the first time. The most notable improvements were made in Maine, which was 35 years old at the time and need of updating. The metal fire stairs that were located outside of the building were enclosed. And if you've never seen a photo before that happened, that's the Aurora window. And you can see that there's not anything blocking it from the rear view. They added marble baths to all the floors. I'm wondering if it's the same marble. And most importantly, the wooden walkway that had been between Main and the dining hall was replaced by the brick enclosure that we all know as the esophagus. So we have all tread through some of the results of Paul's work. Some of the other business that took place during Paul's first time around as the president of the Alumni Association included revamping the reunion schedule to accommodate the growing number of alums and developing a regular schedule of alumni news publications. Her first set of terms ended in 1930, but retirement did not last very long. In 1932, she returned to work this time in the position of alumnus secretary. This position, which had started out volunteer, had become a paid position in 1917, funded by the Alumnae Association's dollars. So she had to raise her own salary. And it's interesting that she found employment in the height of the Depression when we had record unemployment. And it's the only paid employment that we've been able to document that she's had so far. Her salary was $1,500 annually, but that was 5 times the amount that the first alumni secretary had been paid. In 1935, the college gave the alumni secretary office space on the campus, but the association continued to be responsible for its own expenses, including Paul's salary, which originally came from a system of association membership dues, but was replaced in 1939 by the annual fund. And her work includes a lot of the things that we have seen the advancement department do for us. Alumna records and communications, planning the reunions, and of course, more fundraising, this time for an administration building. That's Macmillan. And when Macmillan retired in 1936 and was succeeded by Weld, President Weld, another $1 million campaign began, which was again paused by another world war. And as if Paul didn't have enough on her plate, another part of her job included being the admissions coordinator. There was not yet an admissions director in the administration, and there would not be one until 1944. So instead, the alumni secretary supervised the volunteers of 20 different Wells clubs in different parts of the country, whose job it was to recruit and vet students. Having a paid job in Aurora meant that Paul needed to live there. And we can find her there in the 1940 census, but the census says that she and the majority of staff, their addresses are just listed as merely Wells College. So she was either a renter or a boarder in one of the college properties in the village, but we're not able to document which one. Is Linda out there? I was wondering if she knew if maybe Paul had rented from Catherine, from Anne Reese Pugh, who had owned the house at the time. But
I don't know. I think it's a reasonable hypothesis, but I wouldn't go further than that.
Yeah, that's all I can do with it. But anyway, Paul left the position of alumni secretary in 1940 and began 8 more years as the president of the Alumnae Association. During the same time, she served as alumnus secretary again for 2 years. They asked her back in 43 to 45, and spent 1945 as chair of the Alumna Fund. So you want to talk multitasking. This woman could do it. Then, like I said, the 1940s saw another building campaign that was interrupted by yet another world war, and then resumed when the conflict was over. And about this time, the need for alumni contributions to not just capital campaigns, but for operational expenses began to be part of the picture, because more students were coming, and more of them were coming from less affluent backgrounds and needed scholarships in order to attend. Anyway, this 1940s campaign was again very successful, and it resulted in the funds to construct the Student Union Building, well, wait a second, wrong slide. I think our slides got out of order. It should be the, Weld dormitory. Oh, wait,
It is.
yeah, it is Weld dormitory. Ooh, need to get my eyes checked, sorry. The two wings of the dining hall, here's a picture of what it looked like in her day. And then, of course, we know what it looks like now. And the college's maintenance building. People were so happy with Paul's performance that the alumni honored her by creating a scholarship in her name that year in 1949. And with all the tasks that Paul was undertaking, it's no wonder that she felt like she needed to be in Aurora on a regular basis. And so in 1948, Paul purchased the little white clapboard cottage on Main Street from Professor Emerita Anne Reese Pugh. Now, if she thought it was going to be her retirement home or for vacations, she was going to be mistaken. She may have taken a little bit of a breather, dividing her time then between Aurora and Youngstown, where her mother still lived. But when she was there, she was active in community service, serving on the board of Visiting Nurse Association, the Altar Guild at church, and the local historical society. Paul's little house came in handy when she was elected to the College Board of Trustees in 1954, which is a position that she held until 1960. These years presented some brand new challenges for the college and for its board of trustees to solve. After the two short terms of Presidents Green and Bentley, Lewis Jefferson Long, there he is, came to Wells in 1951. And during his tenure, the size of the student body grew significantly. It increased by 50% by 1964. And these students were very qualified. They had SAT scores that greatly exceeded the national average. But what they didn't have was the wealthy family background of Wells students a generation prior. The need for financial aid for students increased fivefold during Long's tenure. Despite the college having a budget over 1 million in the years, there were shortfalls in annual tuition revenue and of approximately $300 per student in the 1950s and growing to $500 per student by 1961. The money was coming in from alums was going to a lot of the day-to-day operations and the scholarship to bring students in. There was also the problem of where are we going to house all these students? Well, once again, alumni were asked to step up and play a large role in the solution. If you remember that $1 million campaign that Paul was involved in during the 1920s, well, that was just a warm-up for her time as a trustee. In 1958, the board announced the First Century Fund campaign with a goal of $5 million to be raised in time for the college centennial. Partway through, the goal was increased to 6.1 million. Alberta Prigg Zabriskie from class of 32 was named as its national chair. And Paul played her part again by taking on the role of chair of the annual fund for those years. During the campaign, alumna giving became an even more significant part of the college's income, doubling their contributions in 4 years. As before, some of the campaign's proceeds were spent on the campus. Leach dorm was primarily the gift of one alum, Helen Phelps Leach, 25, and her husband. But some of the other new construction that came from as a result of that campaign was the Student Union Building and the Health Center, and then eventually Dodge. Also renovations were made to the kitchen and to in the dining hall and Main and Smith Hall. The funds were also used to increase faculty salaries and to attract matching grants from outside sources like the Emerson Foundation and industries like Procter and Gamble. But the largest portion of it went to scholarship money. By 1965, fully a quarter of the student body was receiving financial aid. And we all know that nowadays a college would kill if they only had to provide scholarship money for 25% of its student body. But so again, the faculty that some of us enjoyed were able to come to Wells because the alumni helped to create the funding for them. And we've all enjoyed all of these buildings. And things were humming along with plans for the centennial year in 1968 with another dorm, Dodge, and the Lewis Jefferson Long Library under construction. Paul attended her 40th and 45th reunion. I'm not sure which one this picture is, but I think this is her on the front row, the second from the right. You know, they were looking forward to their 50th. And I have no doubt she would have been her class's reunion fund chair for that venture. But tragedy struck. Paul was fond of travel her entire life, and she was in New Zealand on March 12, 1965, when the plane in which she was sightseeing crashed and all aboard were killed. Let's see if I can show you a bit. Oh no, here's the death certificate. So we have her death certificate. She was buried in Youngstown. And here we go. Notice about that. Her will, more about her, more articles about her death. Her will indicated that she left her Aurora home to Wells College, along with its contents, except for her great-grandmother's sewing cabinet. That went back to the family. And correspondence between President Long and Paul's brother Henry indicate that that President Long was thinking of using the home for housing visiting faculty. I haven't found a record that actually happened. Have you heard of that, Linda?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Instead, the house was utilized to house alumni who needed lodging in Aurora, something that continued until the recent closing. Also, the Alumnae Association used the home for special events and conferences and to conduct alumni business. There are a lot of you out there who have stayed at the house at one time or another, and you have your own stories about your time in the house. And some of you have even said that you have experienced unusual happenings that indicate Paul may still occupy the house in spirit. Now, in spite of this wonderful record of service to the college, Paul could not be awarded the Alumnae Award that began with the college's centennial, because awards were never given posthumously. But I want to show you something that the Alumnae Association did when it had its centennial. I was looking in a souvenir booklet. Oh, there's her will. And there's Paul House, the house today. But in 1974, when the Alumni Association was celebrating its centennial, they had a little souvenir booklet, and the last page had this photo of her, which is just such a lovely photo. And the dedication said to Pauline Jones, 18, who held the association together from 1921 to 1965. Held us together. That's high praise, I think. And I find myself wondering how Paul would react to the recent news about the college. We've been laughing about what would PJ do. I think she'd want to continue the work of keeping us together. Folks, let's do it. I want to just show you one quick thing. For the most of you who are on the page, I've had contact with recently, but if you haven't, there is a small group of us who are working together to preserve the Paul Jones House as a tribute to Paul and as a tribute to her devotion to Wells, and to continue to give the Wells family a place to come home to. And I'm going to invite you all to follow us on Facebook. We are under the Paul Jones House Preservation Alliance. So look for us there. Our website is being tweaked and should be out shortly. And that's about all I really have time to say about that right now. So stay tuned. Things are going to happen. That's what we have about her so far. I can't wait to find out more. Alexis, have we had people ask questions or any comments that we want to open it up for?
No, but I invite people to raise their hands or put questions into the chat now that the presentation is over. Thanks so much, Fran.
Thank you. Rand, any parting words?
I found that Paul's brother, Henry, went on to marry a woman who's from the Letts family, whose father was had made a pretty good fortune in the grocery business, and they lived in the Washington, D.C. area. Henry died in 1975, but he had a daughter, Emily. And so there are his offspring survive to this day. I was surprised that Paul's family tree, there weren't a lot of people researching her on Ancestry, at least. You'll often encounter other people who have included people you're looking at in family trees that they're working on. There are a few people, but we may try to reach out to some of her cousins or relatives, and if we can find them in the future. Her cottage is a wonderful little cottage, and I don't think it's in the 60 years since she passed away. I suspect it hasn't changed greatly. And I also think she must not have been very tall because some of the doorways are rather low. So if you're my height, you really need to be careful passing into the kitchen there.
Yeah. If you saw Linda's presentation last month, you're aware that this is one of the oldest homes in Aurora. And Linda has documented that it began possibly in around the year 1795. So, it's worth preserving for that reason alone. But the connection to Wells and the connection to Paul makes it especially, important to some of us. Anyone else? Well, I know it's a little early, but we all could probably use a little shut-eye. I know we do because we were just up to see the house recently. I will say that next month, on the schedule, we have, a treat from our friend Annette Dunlap, who is not an alum, but who is greatly interested in Francis Folsom Cleveland and is essentially her unofficial official biographer. So she will be presenting some of the material that you may have heard from her before in 2009 when she came to Wells College and when her book was first published, but she has continued to do research since then, and she has some new material. So I'm looking forward to seeing what new she has cooked up from that work.
That'll be the second Wednesday night in November, which
Quick. It is November 11th, Veterans Day.
November 11th. So we look forward to seeing you folks then. And in the meantime, take care.
Well, the Wednesday, right?
The Wednesday.
Yep.
It's the 12th, November 12th.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, you are right. It is the 12th. Okay. Ooh, tired. Like I said, tired. We all need some sleep.
Go to sleep.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Take care. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
coming.
all. Thank you so much. Good night.